All right, so let's now render the workout input form whenever the user clicks on the map. And so just to make sure that we're still all on the same page, right now we basically have an arrow pointing from here when the user clicks on the map to render a workout on the map, which essentially is the marker that we put on the map in the last video. So right now, when the map is clicked here, then a marker appears on the map. But right now, what we actually want in that event handler that we set up in the last video is to render the form so that a new workout can be added. And then on that form, we will add an event listener so that whenever that form is submitted, only then the marker is rendered on the map. And so we will basically move this rendering of the marker to right here. Okay, so let's take a look at our index.html. And so the form that I'm talking about it's this one here. So this form element here with the class form is the one that we want to render now. And as before, I actually already selected it, and it is this one here, simply called form. Let's take a look here again. And you see that right now it has the hidden class. And so one more time, we are going to do DOM manipulation here by adding and removing classes. And in this case, it is our old friend, basically the hidden class. So let's do what I just said, which is that when a click on the map happens, then we want to show the form. And so not this. And so let's get, for now, let's actually get rid of all this. So I will comment it, and later we will need it. And the same actually for this one. And so all we want to do now is to take the form dot class list dot remove and then remove the class of hidden. So let's see. And this is our demo. This is the real one. And as I click here, then indeed the form here showed up on the left side. And now one cool thing that we can do for a better user experience is to immediately focus on this field here. So that's also what happens when we click on the map here. So you see that right away the cursor is blinking there. And so that's actually relatively easy. So all we need is for this input element here of the distance. And again, I actually already selected all of the inputs. And so that's input distance. And we can simply say input distance. So not that one, but this one. And then on that, we can call the focus method. And that's actually it. Very simple, but for user experience, it's a lot better because we can then immediately start typing like this. And now let's add an event handler to this form for submitting it. And for now, we are not going to care at all about the data here. All we want is whenever this form is submitted, that a marker then appears on the page and exactly at the place that was previously clicked. And notice that we actually don't even have any submit button here. So there's no button to submit this form to make it smaller. But remember that whenever we hit the enter key on any of these fields in a form, then that will actually also trigger the submit event on that form. And so that's what we're going to make use of now. And so let's now add that event listener. And so that, of course, we will do outside of all of this. So we will not have an event listener inside an event listener, right? And also this has nothing to do with the geolocation. And so let's do that completely separate out here. So that's form.add event listener. And then, as I just explained, we are going to listen for submit. And so this is the one that will then display the marker. So let's write it here. Okay. And so let's get this code here and paste it here. And of course, getting rid of the comments. And maybe you're starting to notice that we have not only one, but two problems here actually. So right now we are trying to use two variables that do not exist in the current scope. So we are trying to access map and also map event, right? Now this map here is easy to fix. So that map is this variable here, right? So it is defined inside of the callback function of the geolocation API, so of this get current position. But all we have to do is to basically create a global variable here like this. So this one I'm going to call map. And so here we then simply reassign that map to the already existing variable. And now for map event, we actually have to do the exact same thing. All right. So this map event, we get access to it in this event handler that we set up previously. So that's right here. Let's just add a comment here. Handling clicks on map. And don't worry, we are going to fix this entire code here. So this whole mess that we have been building very soon actually. So handling, because yeah, right now it is all a little bit messy, but that's exactly what I was saying in the beginning of this section. So that we will simply start coding without caring for now about the architecture. So without the structure of the code. But very soon we should actually start to think a little bit about this to organize this code. But anyway, it is inside of this event handler that we get access to the map event. So to that object which will contain the coordinates. However, we don't really need it here, right? So here we are only displaying the form, but where we need it is then later when that form is actually submitted. And so basically as a way of passing it here, we will simply also define the map event as a global variable too. So let me here create also map event. And then here we will have to change the name here. So let's just call it map E, because usually I only call events simply E. And so let's now say map event. So this one here, which is the global variable, should be equal to map E. So again, we did this one here because we don't need this map event right here in this function, which is the place where we get access to it. And so we basically copy it to a global variable. And then here where we do actually need it, we will get access to that global variable and can then use the latitude and longitude right here in this function. And so this will already work at this point. So let's wait for the map to load. There it is. I will click here in the middle of the city. And then again, we don't need to care about the data at all. So I will just hit the enter key. And then maybe for a second you saw it appearing down here, but then immediately the page reloaded. And so the reason for that is because the default behavior of forms is doing exactly that. And so once again, we actually need the event here, and then we need to call event.preventDefault. And so that should now fix it. And so let me click here again. I will just hit enter, and there it is. So now basically the marker appears here in two steps. First, the form is displayed, and then when we submit that form, finally the marker is then rendered here on the map. All right, cool. Let's try another one here. Let's just put some values here. But indeed, that works now. Now this form here is far from complete. For example, all the values here should be cleared, and also the form should disappear after we inputted something. But, well, let's take care actually of the first one now, so clearing all the input fields, but then about the hiding of the form, let's actually do that a little bit later. All right. So let's take all the values. So that's input distance, duration, and cadence, or cadence. I'm not sure about that one. So these three are these three fields. Okay, but then we also have the elevation gain for cycling, and so that's another input, and so we need to clear all of them. Even though this one here is not yet visible, but actually we will take care of that right after doing this one. So let's take these 4 inputs and clear them, and then I will actually show you how we can display this one. So let's do that here. Clear input fields. And so that's input distance. So we can set it equal to the empty string, and then we can actually put them all equal at the same time. So input, let's say duration, then this one, and then finally the elevation as well. So just to test that and to show you the next step here as well. So when we click, let's just put some random values here. Oh, and now we get an error here. So assignment to constant variable. And a good thing that this is happening because I already remember the mistake that I make. And so that is forgetting the value here. So of course we don't want to clear the entire element, right? We just want to clear the value. So this is one that I keep forgetting. I think this wasn't the first time for some reason. All right, but that actually works. And so now finally, what I want to do is whenever we click on cycling here, then this cadence or cadence should change to elevation. So watch what happens here in the demo when I click cycling. Then both of these changed. And if I click again, then that changes back. And that is actually easier to do than you might think, because there is actually an event which is triggered whenever we change the value of this select element. And so let's now listen for that event, and then whenever it happens, we will then basically hide and display the corresponding fields. So that element that I just showed you is this one. So it is the form input type. All right. So form input type, and so it's this one. It's input type. And so let's listen for the change event on that one. So input type dot add event listener. So again, it is called change. And then let's move back actually to the HTML here, just to see how the form is hidden. And so you see that this here is the elevation field. So you see input and then form input elevation. And so that is exactly this one here. So again, form input elevation. So that's the input elevation. And so this is the element that we're going to work with. So let's actually write that here. So input elevation, but then the one that actually has the hidden class, and in this case, the class is called form row hidden. So let's copy that. And so again, the element that has this hidden class is essentially the closest div element to this input field. Or in other words, it is the closest parent which also has this form row class. And so what we're going to do is to toggle this hidden class both on the elevation gain and on the cadence or the cadence. Because these two rows here, so from these two, there will only ever be one of them visible. So whenever this one is hidden, this one should be visible. And when this one is hidden, then this one should be visible. And so what we can do is simply toggle this hidden class here on both of them whenever this change event happens. So I just said a couple of different things there at the same time. So the first thing that we need to do is to select the closest parent with that form row. And so for that, we use DOM traversal and the very handy closest method. And so here we can now specify the class name, or actually a selector. So here we need a fully fledged selector to select an element. So basically, remember, the closest method is like an inverse query selector. So it selects parents and not children. All right. Then we take the class list and then we simply toggle this class here. And then we do the same on the input cadence. So this one. And so by toggling the same class on both of them, we make sure there is always one of them that's hidden and the other one visible. All right. So let's wait for it one more time, clicking somewhere. And so let's wait for it. And yep, that works beautifully. So let's just add one here. And indeed, there it is. Okay, so all of this works very nicely now. And the next step here would be to actually take the data here out of the form and then using that data, create an actual workout. However, here in our code, we are at a point where we need some structure. And we will also need a way of managing that workout data that is going to come from this form. So this data here will have to be stored somewhere. And so again, we need to think a little bit about our code structure here and about our code architecture. And so that is going to be exactly the topic of the next video.